Welcome to Close Your Eyes, Listen to Stories. Close your eyes, relax, and let me take you into the story. If you enter the world of Greek myth by the highest path, you do not arrive first at peace. You arrive at weather. The old stories begin in a sky alive with corals, prophecies, sea winds, and the ringing of bronze. Mountains stand like the backs of sleeping gods. Rivers remember older powers than Olympus. In that charged and luminous world, Athena appears not as a soft dawn drifting over the hills, but as a sudden brilliance of mind made visible. Before her birth, there was Métis, a goddess of cunning intelligence, deep counsel, and the kind of wisdom that does not shout. Zeus desired her, yet he also feared a prophecy that haunted divine dynasties. Métis would bear first a daughter equal to her father in strength and judgment, and then a son who might surpass him. Greek myth is full of fathers who hear such warnings too late. Zeus heard in time and did what the gods so often do when frightened by the future. He tried to swallow it. He took Métis into himself, believing he had mastered danger. But thought cannot be digested so easily. Métis continued to live and work within him, forging armor for the child she carried. Then came the pain. Zeus, lord of thunder, who could shake mountains and send storms over the wine-dark sea, was seized by a blinding ache in his head. The crisis grew until one of the divine smiths came to help. In most tellings, it is Hephaestus, with his hammer and practical hands. In one older strand of tradition, it is Prometheus, whoever held the blade. The act is unforgettable. The skull of Zeus was split, and from it sprang Athena, full-grown, armored, and crying out. She did not emerge as an infant wrapped in helplessness. She arrived already complete, wearing a helmet, carrying a spear, and shining with such force that earth and sea were said to tremble. The image tells you almost everything the Greeks wanted you to know. Athena is intelligence that does not wait to ripen. She is judgment already awake. She is discipline born ready for use. Yet because she comes from the head of Zeus and from the swallowed wisdom of Métis, she belongs not merely to battle, but to strategy, planning, memory, and skill. This is why Athena never feels like a simple war goddess. That place is occupied by Ares, who loves the roar, the wound, the crash of bodies meeting in fury. Athena stands elsewhere. She prefers the measured step before the clash, the hand steady on the reins, the shield angled with precision, the city wall well designed, the ship properly built, the argument won because it is sound. She is battle with purpose, craft with nerve, and intelligence under pressure. Her signs gather around this character like stars around a cold moon. The owl belongs to her, not because it is merely adorable or solemn, but because it sees in dim light. It turns its head and notices what others miss. The olive tree belongs to her because it gives slow, useful blessings, oil for lamps, fruit for the table, wood for tools, leaves silver in the wind. The spear belongs to her because wisdom, in Greek thought, is not always passive. It may need to defend a boundary. The loom belongs to her because order is something woven, thread by thread, choice by choice. Even her epithets feel like facets of a polished stone. Glaucopes, often rendered bright-eyed or gray-eyed, suggests an alert and gleaming gaze. Pallas Athena may point to a ritual title or an ancient layer of her worship so old that scholars still argue over its roots. Athena Parthenos names her as the maiden, but this does not make her fragile or hidden. It means she stands outside the ordinary structures of marriage and inheritance. She is not absorbed into a household. She remains her own center of power. And yet she is not remote in the way some gods are remote. Athena is often nearest where human hands are busiest. You find her in the potter's careful turn of clay, in the carpenter's measured line, in the mind of a navigator reading currents, in the counselor who knows that the harshest answer is not always the strongest one. In Athens, she would be worshipped as Athena Polias, guardian of the city, and as Athena Ergane, patron of work and craft. These are not separate personalities so much as different angles of one idea. Wisdom must enter matter if it is to change the world. There is something slightly unsettling in her birth as well. Athena is loved, but she is also formidable. She comes into myth already carrying the tension that will mark her stories. She protects heroes, but she expects excellence. She rewards skill, but she hates arrogance. She can guide, teach, and save. She can also harden, punish, and expose. Her calm is not softness. It is concentration. So when you first meet Athena, it helps to imagine not only the flash of bronze at her birth, but the silence just after it. A goddess has entered the world who will become the mind of cities, the conscience of certain wars, and the patron of difficult human making. Far below Olympus, a rocky land beside the sea is waiting for her name. To understand Athena fully, you have to leave Olympus for a while and walk down to Attica, where stone rises pale above the sea and light gathers sharply on bare hills. There, on the height that would become the Acropolis, the myth of Athena grows roots. This is where she is not only a goddess among gods, but a presence tied to one place, one people, and one vision of what a city might be. The Athenians told a famous story about how their land received its divine patron. Poseidon, lord of the sea, wanted the territory for himself. Athena wanted it too. The contest was not settled through combat, but through gifts. That already feels appropriate. Even in rivalry, Athena's myth turns toward usefulness, toward what can sustain a human life. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident. In some versions, a salt spring burst forth. In others, a horse appeared, magnificent and dangerous, a sign of speed, war, aristocratic power, and untamed force. Athena answered by planting the olive tree. It was a quieter miracle, and therefore an easy one to underestimate. The olive does not gallop. It does not shatter stone. It asks for patience. But from it come oil for light, oil for skin, oil for sacred anointing, fruit for nourishment, wood for handles and small carvings. In a dry land where survival depends on understanding limits, the olive is the gift of continuity. So Athena won the contest, usually with King Cecrops, the serpent-footed early ruler of Athens, as witness. The city took her name. The myth is simple on the surface, but it says something profound about the kind of protection Athena offers. Poseidon gives force, splendor, and motion. Athena gives durability. She does not merely defend walls after they are built. She teaches the habits by which a community can endure. Law, craft, storage, planning, ritual, disciplined courage, memory of ancestors, reverence for common life. These belong to her sphere as much as helmets and shields do. On the Acropolis, later Athenians embodied these myths in stone and ceremony. The Erechtheion, with its unusual asymmetrical plan and its famous porch of maidens, housed some of the most ancient cults of the city. Visitors in antiquity were shown marks in the rock, said to come from Poseidon's trident. They were also shown Athena's sacred olive tree. Even after the Persians burned Athens in 480 BCE, a tradition held that the old olive sent up a fresh shoot almost at once, as if the goddess had made a quiet declaration that devastation was not the end. Athena's role in the city was renewed year after year during the Panathenea, the great festival held in her honor. A woven robe, the peplos, was carried in procession and presented to her ancient wooden image. This detail matters because it joins grandeur to labor. The robe was not a king's trophy seized in battle. It was cloth made by skilled hands, often by women whose work stood at the center of domestic and civic life. In honoring Athena, the city honored making itself. Here again, you can feel how different she is from the louder gods. Athena is not wild like Dionysus, not oceanic like Poseidon, not blazing and remote like Apollo at his most severe. She dwells in the zone where thought becomes institution. The Greeks imagined her near assembly places, law courts, workshops, and citadels. Her warlike side is always balanced by the reality that battles are fought for homes, shrines, harbors, and living streets. Some Athenians worshipped her as Athena Nike, Athena of victory. In the small temple on the Acropolis dedicated to this form of the goddess, victory itself becomes almost intimate, held close rather than shouted over a battlefield. A later popular tradition claimed that the image there was wingless, so victory could never fly away. Whether or not that idea belongs to the oldest cult, it captures something true about Athenian longing. They did not simply want triumph. They wanted stability that could stay. This local bond also gave Athena one of her deepest paradoxes. She is universal enough to appear across the Greek world, yet she is also fiercely particular. She loves one city with a special intensity that can make her seem noble, and it can make her seem partisan. The myths never entirely smooth out that tension. Gods in Greek story are often close to what they protect, and closeness brings preference. Athena defends Athens, but she also becomes a model for what any city might hope to be at its best: clear-minded, skilled, self-governing, and hard to destroy. If you stand in imagination on the Acropolis before the marble shines with later perfection, you can picture an older sanctuary: weathered wood, oil smoke, woven cloth, the rustle of processions, and beyond the rock the sea catching light. Somewhere nearby an olive tree moves in a thin wind. That tree is Athena's answer to violence. It is not weakness. It is provision. It is the long intelligence that outlives a storm. Athena is easiest to admire when she is defending a city or guiding a hero. She becomes more complicated and therefore more humanly interesting when you watch her around talent. No Greek deity is more closely tied to skill, and few are more severe when skill forgets reverence. With Athena, excellence is holy, but pride can turn it poisonous in a moment. One of her titles, Athena Ergain, presents her as the goddess of craftspeople. Under that name, she watches over weaving, carpentry, metalwork, pottery, and 1,000 acts by which raw matter is persuaded into useful form. This is not decorative wisdom. It is practical. It lives in the exact pull of thread, the clean edge of a fitted beam, the choice of where a handle should rest in the hand. Greek religion often placed divinity in the places modern people call ordinary. Athena is one reason why. The most famous story about this side of her is the tale of Arachne, a young woman from Lydia whose weaving was so exquisite that even the local nymphs came to watch her work. The important detail is that Arachne really is gifted. The myth loses its sting if you imagine her mediocre. Her hands move with astonishing certainty. She spins scenes as if the threads themselves want to obey her. But she cannot stop at mastery. She boasts that her art surpasses Athena's own. The goddess comes to her in disguise, usually as an old woman, and offers a warning gentle enough to accept without humiliation. Arachne refuses. So the contest begins. Athena weaves divine order, power, and the punishments that follow mortal arrogance. Arachne, daringly, weaves the misdeeds of gods, seductions, deceptions, and divine abuses carried out under beautiful disguises. This is one reason the story has stayed alive. Arachne's tapestry is not crude rebellion. It is brilliant, observant, and uncomfortable. Even Athena cannot fault the workmanship. What she cannot bear is the challenge itself, and perhaps the truth stitched into it. In Ovid's version, Athena tears the work and strikes Arachne. The girl, in despair, hangs herself, and Athena transforms her into a spider so she and her descendants will weave forever. It is a harsh ending. If you sit with it a while, the myth stops being a simple lesson in obedience and becomes something stranger. Athena protects craft, yet she also punishes the craftsperson who claims equality. She loves beauty made with discipline, but not when it severs itself from sacred measure. There are other myths where her relation to creation is equally tense. One of the strangest concerns Erichthonius, an early Athenian figure linked to the earth and to the city's ancient kings. In the story, Hephaestus desires Athena and chases her. She resists him. His seed falls upon the ground, and from earth, or Gaia, Erichthonius is conceived. Athena does not become his mother in the ordinary sense, yet she takes responsibility for the child. She places him in a chest and entrusts him to the daughters of Cecrops with strict instructions not to look inside. They do, and what they see drives them mad. A child somehow entwined with a serpent or guarded by serpents, an image of ancient chthonic power folded into the civic future of Athens. Here Athena appears as guardian of a mystery she did not choose, shaping chaos into lineage. The story also hints at something central to her identity. She is not a mother goddess, yet she repeatedly becomes a caretaker of fragile beginnings. Cities, laws, inventions, young heroes, difficult transitions from wildness into form. She does not cradle life in softness. She protects it through structure. Another smaller myth reveals her exacting sense of proportion. Athena invents the aulos, the double pipe, in some traditions. When she sees in a pool how playing it distorts her cheeks, she throws it away. The satyr Marsyas later takes it up, with disastrous consequences when he challenges Apollo. The story has many layers, but one possible reading fits Athena well. Not every art belongs to every deity. She values harmony between form and function. An instrument that disrupts her chosen composure does not suit her. This can make her seem cold, yet it may be more accurate to call her unsentimental. Athena knows the cost of making anything durable. A woven cloth unravels if tension is wrong. A city collapses if pride outruns judgment. A craftsperson becomes destructive if admiration turns inward and starts feeding on itself. In her myths, the hand must answer to the mind, and the mind must answer to a larger order. That is why she is beloved by workers and feared by the arrogant. Under her gaze, talent is never only talent. It is a test of character. The loom sings, the shuttle moves, the design opens beneath patient fingers, And always there is the same quiet question. Will skill become service or vanity? Athena never stops asking it. Athena does not usually love heroes for their muscles. She loves them for their minds, or for the rare moment when courage and intelligence join cleanly together. In myth, she becomes the companion of such people, though companion may not be quite the right word. She stands beside them, above them, around them in disguise, giving what they lack and expecting them to rise toward it. With Perseus, her help is precise. He has been sent to bring back the head of Medusa, whose gaze turns living flesh to stone. This is not a task that brute strength can solve. Athena gives him a polished shield, bright enough to serve as a mirror. It is one of the most elegant solutions in all myth. Do not stare at the monster directly. Learn to see indirectly. Let reflection save you where force alone would fail. In many artistic traditions, Athena remains near as Perseus approaches, as if wisdom itself must stand beside the hand that strikes. She is also linked in later mythic tradition with Bellerophon, the hero who tames Pegasus. The winged horse cannot be mastered by raw daring. Athena provides a golden bridle in a dream, and with it the impossible creature accepts human guidance. Again, the pattern is unmistakable. She grants the tool that allows wild power to become directed power. She does not erase danger. She teaches form. But it is with Odysseus that Athena's affection becomes richest and most personal. She sees in him a mortal echo of her own intelligence, resourceful, verbal, adaptive, dangerous when cornered, unwilling to meet every obstacle head-on if a better path can be found around it. Homer often lets the two of them resemble one another so closely that their bond feels almost like recognition. During the long aftermath of Troy, Athena works on Odysseus's behalf with patient intricacy. She argues for him among the gods. She arranges meetings. She casts protective mist. She appears in disguises, often as the figure named Mentor, and from that old literary mask comes the modern word for the person who guides another toward maturity. It is a small but beautiful legacy. Even in language, Athena becomes a teacher hidden inside assistance. One of her loveliest interventions occurs in the land of the Phaeacians. Odysseus lies exhausted, stripped down by shipwreck and salt. Athena enters the dream of Nausicaa, the princess who will find him, and nudges events with the lightest touch. Later she makes Odysseus appear taller and more radiant, a little more godlike, because she understands that survival sometimes depends on timing and presentation as much as on truth. She is not the goddess of naive honesty. She is the goddess of wise revelation. When Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, Athena does not simply restore him and step away. She helps stage the conditions of recognition. She disguises him as a beggar. She tests servants and kin. She tells him when to conceal and when to disclose. In one of the poem's most intimate moments, God and mortal exchange plans almost as co-conspirators. Their partnership feels active, alert, and oddly warm beneath its caution. Yet Athena's support always has edges. She favors the clever, but cleverness can become cruelty. Odysseus is not a gentleman, and Athena does not demand gentleness from him at every turn. What she seeks is effectiveness governed by a higher design. When that design holds, she is magnificent. When it narrows into favoritism, she can seem partial and fierce. Greek myth rarely offers pure comfort. It offers patterns of power, and Athena's power is to align intelligence with outcome. This is why heroes who receive her help often become more themselves, not less. She does not replace their agency. She sharpens it. Perseus still has to descend toward danger. Odysseus still has to endure grief, temptation, and the strain of returning to a home altered by time. Athena gives the shield, the dream, the disguise, the counsel. The human being still has to choose. If you listen closely, her guidance has a particular sound. It is rarely thunder. More often, it is the hush before a decision, the mind suddenly seeing the angle that was hidden a moment ago. A bright surface, a better question, a hand reaching for the right tool instead of the nearest one. That is how Athena walks beside heroes. Not always tenderly, not always fairly, but with an intelligence so exact that myth itself seems to lean when she enters. Athena's myths become darkest when wisdom enters war, because war is the place where even noble principles gather soot. She is not innocent of blood. Greek tradition never pretends otherwise. She may prefer strategy to frenzy, but strategy still kills. To know Athena fully, you have to see her not only in workshops and councils, but amid burning cities, broken oaths, and the difficult birth of justice. At Troy, Athena stands firmly with the Greeks after Paris chooses Aphrodite over her in the judgment of Paris. The slight is personal, and Greek gods are never too divine to feel insult. Yet once the war is underway, Athena's actions show more than wounded vanity. In the Iliad, she restrains Achilles when his rage would shatter the Greek cause before the battle even begins. She helps Diomedes distinguish gods from mortals on the field. She lends force to selected champions, withdraws it from others, and turns combat into a grim game of timing and perception. Her opposition to Ares in the epic is especially revealing. Ares embodies battle as appetite, the joy of collision. Athena meets him with superior control. In one scene, she guides a boulder into his body through Diomedes' hand, and the war god roars across the field. The image is almost comic, but its point is serious. Undisciplined violence is not, in her eyes, true strength. And yet Troy ends in fire. Athena is implicated in the world that allows such endings. Some later traditions connect her even to the making or protection of the Palladium, the sacred image on which the city's safety depended. Once the web of oaths, judgments, and rivalries is tightened, wisdom does not magically undo catastrophe. This is one of the most adult truths in her mythology. Intelligence can guide action, but it cannot guarantee innocence. After the city falls, another incident exposes Athena's severity. Ajax the Lesser drags Cassandra from Athena's sanctuary, violating both the woman and the sacred space that should have protected her. The Greeks, flushed with victory, failed to answer the outrage properly. Athena's anger flares. On the voyage home, she and Poseidon send storms against the returning fleet. Here she becomes avenger of sacrilege, reminding victors that conquest does not exempt them from law. Even success can rot if it forgets reverence. But perhaps her most extraordinary appearance comes after another cycle of blood, in Aeschylus' telling of Orestes. Orestes has killed his mother, Clytemnestra, to avenge his father, Agamemnon. The old logic of kinslaying and revenge closes around him. The Erinyes, ancient furies of blood guilt, pursue him relentlessly. He comes to Athena not because he is innocent, but because he is trapped in a moral structure that produces only more death. Athena does not wave a hand and dismiss the crime. she does something far more radical. She creates a court. On the hill of Ares, the Areopagus, she summons citizens to hear the case and vote. This moment is myth, ritual memory, political imagination, and religious poetry all at once. Instead of endless retaliation, there will be deliberation. Instead of inherited rage alone, there will be judgment. The votes are cast and come out equal. Athena adds her own ballot for acquittal. Modern readers sometimes argue over the fairness of her reasoning, and perhaps they should. The play preserves tensions that do not sit comfortably in any age. But the deeper movement matters. Athena interrupts the chain. She then turns to the enraged Erinyes and persuades them not to remain enemies of the city, but to become the Eumenides, the kindly ones, honored powers within a new civic order. It is one of the boldest transformations in all mythology. Athena does not destroy the old forces. She gives them a place, a ritual, a new name, and therefore a new relationship to the community. Justice, in her hands, is not forgetfulness. It is recontainment of terror, so people can live. This scene may be the clearest expression of everything she represents at her highest. She is still formidable. She still bears the spear. She still chooses sides. But she also understands that if every injury demands another injury forever, no city will stand. The guardian of Athens becomes here the guardian of an idea more lasting than any wall. That reasoned judgment, however imperfect, is better than inherited vengeance without end. So the same goddess who once sprang forth in armor from the head of Zeus becomes, in time, the one who teaches that the sharpest weapon is not always bronze. Sometimes it is the vote that breaks a curse. Sometimes it is the willingness to hear grief without letting grief rule everything that follows. Athena remains stern even then, but in that sternness there is the beginning of mercy. Long after no one brought a peplos up the Acropolis in living worship, Athena remained. She stayed in marble, in poetry, in the grammar of education, in the designs stamped on coins, in the owl that still suggests alert intelligence, in every later culture that needed a figure for disciplined thought joined to public responsibility. The Greeks gave her to the world, but the world kept finding new uses for her. Part of that endurance comes from the breadth of what she gathers into one form. Athena is wisdom, but not detached contemplation floating above life. She is wisdom that can build a ship, plan a defense, judge a dispute, advise a traveler, and supervise a loom. She honors the mind, yet she distrusts abstractions that never descend into use. In that sense, she still feels startlingly modern. Many people continue to long for exactly what she represents. Intelligence that remains steady under pressure and does not become cruel merely because it is sharp. She also persists because she holds together qualities that often drift apart in human experience. She is martial without loving chaos. She is rational without being bloodless. She is a virgin goddess who nevertheless cares intensely for cities, households, and continuities beyond herself. She can be proud, partisan, even frighteningly severe, yet she also protects the vulnerable when they stand within the bounds of justice. Myths that survive are rarely simple ideals. They survive because they preserve tension people still recognize. Look at where her image traveled. The Romans welcomed her as Minerva. Renaissance painters and sculptors restored her helmet and spear when they wanted to speak about learning, prudent rule, or the arts. Statues of her rose in libraries, academies, courthouses, and civic buildings. Her owl appeared on Athenian silver tetradrachms, so famous that the coins themselves were nicknamed owls. Even now, when institutions want to signal discernment, scholarship, or strategic vision, they often reach instinctively towards symbols that belong to Athena's old inheritance. There's a quieter reason, too. Athena offers a version of strength many people find more trustworthy than domination. She does not promise that force will make life simple. She suggests instead that attention, training, memory, and self-command may help you move through complexity without being devoured by it. Her myths tell you that the world is dangerous, pride is common, and even the wise make partial choices. But they also tell you that skill matters, that thought matters, that a better order can be built thread by thread. If you return in imagination to Athens, you can see why the city held her so closely. Above the plain rises the Acropolis, and on it the Parthenon once shone with sculpted battles and processions, not merely to glorify victory, but to place human struggle under the gaze of a goddess who demanded form. Somewhere nearby, the olive leaves turn their pale undersides to the wind. Down below, workshops hum, arguments unfold, children learn names, elders remember older wars. Athena belongs to all of it. She belongs as well to a more inward place. There are moments in any life when the path ahead is not hidden by darkness, but by excess. Too many choices, too much noise, too much emotion crowding the mind. Athena's presence in myth is like a clearing in that clutter. Not an escape from feeling, but a still point inside it. A breath before the answer. A hand resting on the right tool. A decision shaped not by panic, but by proportion. This is perhaps why she never fades entirely into academic distance. You do not have to believe in Olympus as a physical mountain of gods to feel the pull of what Athena names. She is the hope that intelligence can be honorable. She is the hope that courage can be thoughtful. She is the hope that power, at least sometimes, can protect rather than consume. And so her myths continue to open like old doors. Behind one door, bronze flashes and a goddess leaps from thunderous thought. Behind another, an olive tree roots itself in dry earth and promises continuity. Behind another, a hero survives because he looks into a shield instead of directly into terror. Behind another, furious ancient powers are asked to sit within law and become something gentler without ceasing to be real. If you leave Athena there at the end, it may be best to leave her in motion yet unhurried, a bright-eyed figure on a height above the sea, the owl nearby, the spear grounded, the wind moving lightly through olive branches. Nothing in that image is rushed. Nothing is careless. The world remains difficult, as it always was in Greek myth. But under her watch, difficulty is met with steadiness. And steadiness, in the end, can feel like its own quiet form of grace. And that's where this story comes to a rest. Close your eyes, carry this story with you, and slowly drift off to sleep. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to Close Your Eyes, Listen to Stories. There's always a new story waiting for you here. Sweet dreams.